I work for the backlot at Paramount Pictures maintaining the Star Trek archive, which I've been collecting materials for since I started, basically. And I would collect them and store them in an office drawer or at home in my garage until I finally got a space large enough here at Paramount to start returning these things and keeping them safe here. I have most of the blueprints that still exist, the original drawings from the features, from the television shows, TNG. I even have some stuff remaining from the original series. I am the project coordinator for Star Trek the magazine. I do research for the Fact Files, which is unfortunately only a European publication, but they require a lot of research. So we pull blueprints, pictures for them, whatever might be on their list for the week's publication. I also do art coordination for the features, and currently art coordinating on Star Trek Nemesis, which is my fourth Star Trek film, actually. So I have a multitude of Star Trek jobs, and just very happy. I have a hobby for a job. On the new feature, Star Trek Nemesis, when that show started up, I kept all the records and logs and documents of where everything was stored and by whom from Star Trek IX, from Star Trek Insurrection. I have all the records from the prop master, wardrobe, set dressing, what the containers were marked. This is box number 6 contains this particular item. I kept all of those records, and probably the only one that did. So rather than having to find all of these people from the last movie, it's all stored in drawers here on the lot and available for the production designers' use. There is literally 35 years worth of material. Models, props, set dressing, set pieces, walls. There's at least 5 to 6 warehouses that contain material from Star Trek. This is one of the numerous rooms in one of the numerous warehouses that Paramount owns, where we store multiple containers, as you can tell, of models from various features and television shows, miniatures, model ships, furniture, set dressing, wall pieces, and it just goes on and on. It's kind of like the end of the scene with Indiana Jones, where you have that huge warehouse and it just goes on forever. That's kind of what it looks like here. As an example, one of the redresses that we do, and because of the expense of the models, we will change the name on it rather frequently. This was the Excelsior at one time, and now is the USS Frederickson. If you get a close-up here, in microscopic words, it says USS Excelsior on it. So that'll be used repeatedly, and or what they may do also is take the CGI and change it on just on the video film instead of changing the model itself. Our little shuttlecraft, the Elbaz shuttle from the Enterprise D. The little door actually opens and closes. One of the more favorite things in the warehouse are these little cargo containers, which might be used in a larger miniature where we might have a shuttlecraft crashing into a cargo bay, for example, or if the Enterprise has been hit, you might see these collapsing inside the larger miniature, and obviously they can either CGI more people in there, that, like Worf, for example, would be in there, and these would be collapsing, falling all over the place, and nobody gets hurt. But this is certainly fun. It has the TNG logo on it. Another example of a little bit of industrial thinking by our model builders. Part of Utopia Planitia from Mars. This was actually built with garbage can lids. A little bit of graphics tape, car stripping tape, pieces of antenna. This is also what we call kit bashing. You might take pieces from, let's say, the USS New Jersey. A lot of battleship pieces are used, for example, tank pieces, pieces of radio, whatever we can find, actually, that has a great look to it. And we do what they call a plant-on. They'll just stick them on here. And these are graphics done by the graphics art department. They want a window look to it. Another piece of Utopia Planitia would be more in the background. This is actually made out of bird bath, cat toy. You can see where the little ball goes in here. There's an egg poacher inside. These are hair curlers on top of acrylic rod. Again, a little bit of aging, a little bit of spray paint. Some wires inside the seed lights. Graphics department created the little windows and little tiny people all through here, and you've got a whole building. Another example of what would have been a nice alien building. This is actually a piece of an air conditioner unit that would have been transformed into something, let's say, on Cardassia. Diffuser is lined inside of it so that when they light it, the lighting is definitely softer. You don't create a hot spot, or so that the camera can actually see a glow, making it seem as if people are actually living inside of the building or working inside of the building. Another model that's been used repeatedly is our little shuttlecraft. It started off being used on the D. Now, as you can tell, it's been changed over and has been used on Voyager. Throughout the middle of Voyager, then they, of course, created the new shuttlecraft. In this warehouse, not all of our miniatures are miniature. This is the saucer section of the Enterprise D that was used in the crash scene from Star Trek Generations. There goes a Borg. One of the better examples of kit bashing and miniatures is the Dyson Sphere. This was used in an episode called Relics. And if you were to look back here, this is on a pallet, and there's at least 10 other pieces to this. In order to save time and hours, the model makers will actually create a master mold. They'll actually take the pieces of the models that they're using. They'll create one piece and make one after another after another after another by using vacuum forming, or they will mold resin, and that way they don't have to keep reproducing the same thing over and over again. So you can only imagine how much work went into something this size, along times 10, like a giant jigsaw puzzle basically. One of the better recognized space stations that I have at the warehouse is lovingly known as the Mushroom. It was used in Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek 1, Star Trek 3, and it just on from there. And up here are the actual bay doors where the Enterprise would have come flying out of from the saucer section. A lot of people may not realize that in Star Trek II, a special effect that was used was in Chekhov's ear, when the earwig actually came pouring out after they had stunned him. This was the piece used. Obviously it wasn't his real ear, so they had to come up with another way of having the bug oozing out of his ear, which was embedded deep inside. Ow! I think he's still in there, actually. Oh. Used in Star Trek II. This is the space station, regular one. And in case you didn't recognize it, it was also used in Star Trek 1, but the reason you may not recognize it is because it was actually used upside down. Could you turn me right side up again, please? Thank you. Star Trek fans will probably recognize pieces of the Reliant, and more often than not, we actually do have to blow up ships. It may look as if it's been destroyed, but we did that on purpose. As you can see, the nacelle that was actually burned. And this was in the battle with Kirk in the nebula. I have a trivia question for you. What's wrong with this picture? This is the 6-foot Enterprise D used throughout the 7 years of Star Trek The Next Generation, and also in Generations itself. If you look closely, you can see the different shades of blues that are applied in order to give it a metallic appearance. Over here, if you look, you'll see the escape pod doors, shuttle bay doors, and the first half of our answer, Enterprise D. If you go to the front of the ship, you can actually see the other half of our answer, Enterprise E. Why do you think that is? We also have props at this warehouse. One of the more fun ones is this Borg energy pack that was used in First Contact. If you recall, the Borg took over the deflector shield on top of the Enterprise ship. They were carrying these on their back, and they're actually made out of bird feeders. And inside, we placed a fluorescent tube, which we left on the packaging of the fluorescent tube, painted it a bright bronze gold color, wrapped it with an amber gel, and then lit it. The same bird feeders were also used as Starfleet tram cars in many episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, and we also used them as organic sample containers from Deep Space Nine and Voyager. So if you pay real close attention, you can see these bird feeders throughout numerous episodes and movies. This is a Klingon disruptor, and this is one of the items as an example that I keep in storage that's been used many, many times throughout the history of Star Trek, and probably one of the more prized props that I really cherish just even being able to touch. This is actually made in a few pieces. The barrels come apart. Hand painted, typically they do a little bit of airbrushing, and then it's rubbed with rub and brush. It's just a little tube paint. And they do get touched up from time to time. The next time we'll use it, if it's a little bit too beat up from being used, then they'll touch it up a little bit as they need it. But we want the Klingon stuff to look a little rugged. This is a Klingon disruptor rifle used in many, many countless episodes and features. And we just reuse the same props over and over because the Klingons pretty much don't change. This is one of my more prized possessions in the archive. This is a batleth, obviously, a Klingon batleth. Dan Curry designed these, and they've been used from the very beginning. It actually has real leather strapping on it, but Dan Curry is a master of Tai Chi, and he's the one that actually does the choreographing for the show. He's the one that shows Michael Dorn and the other Klingons how the movement should be done. And actually, this is made out of rubber so that the actors can't hurt themselves. It's really done pretty well. It looks like aluminum or brushed aluminum or something, and technically would have been made out of Damascus steel.
What is this?
A batleth. It belonged to my father. It has been in our family for 10 generations.
Let me hold it.
This one I don't lend out to anybody, actually. This is going to stay in the archive, and I let people take pictures of it and hold it, but that's pretty much not going any further than there. One of the more rare props that I have in my collection for the archive is a phaser rifle from Star Trek The Next Generation.
Your medical supplies have been found in rebel strongholds.
We make no effort to restrict access to our medical supplies.
Are your weapons also freely available?
No, they are not.
Then explain this.
These are coming harder and harder to find as they have disappeared over the years, as you can imagine. And of course they've changed the look of these as well, so they're no longer in use, but they're still really wonderful to have for us to use in exhibits so that we can show the progression of the Starfleet phaser rifles as they've been developed and changed over the series and over the features. It's actually quite heavy, but it's to help the actors get the feel and the weight of what a weapon might, instead of being hollow or something, it's very solid. This is actually one of my more favorite and much more interesting pieces that's in storage in the archive. I found this in a box when I was doing inventory at one of the warehouses. It's the first opportunity I'd had to actually go through the boxes and see what was out there. And I opened the lid of this cardboard box, and I kept thinking, what the heck is that? And fortunately, the person that was with me, Anthony Fredrickson, knew right off the bat. And the same response as I figured out what it was like, I can't believe that. This was the core that was removed from the saucer of the Enterprise D by the Borg in Q Who. So obviously, I think just about any fan would pay a rather hefty price to get their hands on this. You can actually see a lot of the details in this particular model of the cross-section of the ship, like plumbing, for example, and conduits and wiring, furniture, conference table, chairs, there's carpet even. One of the things we were on search to keep in the archive for was the model of the Enterprise D that was used throughout the entire series. Couldn't find it anywhere and had no real idea where it had gone. And I get a call from Gil Johnson from the back lot, and he says, downstairs in the construction office we have this model laying on a couch that someone had just appeared. I don't really where it came from, but somebody just brought it in, set it on the couch, and here you are. We don't know really what it is. Can you come over and take a look at it? And he says, so I go over and I look at it, and pretty much knew right away what it was. And a little bit teary, and so I said, I need a minute to get a hold of someone who I know will know for a fact and can confirm my thoughts on this. So I called Michael Kuda. He came down, stood there looking at it, and jaw-dropping said, "Oh my God." It was the model of the Enterprise D for Star Trek The Next Generation that we thought had disappeared. We thought surely someone had absconded with it. And apparently it had been loaned for display in one of the restaurants. It had been hanging over a grill for quite some time, apparently. And it still had the wires hanging from it that they'd used to suspend it with, and holes that they had drilled in it. Any cells are broken. It was in really, really bad condition, as you can imagine, and it was also covered with a few layers of grease besides. And so now it's back in our possession and safe and sound in a little crate and stored in a very secret place. So hopefully sometime in the near future we'll get to restore it. It is one of the original models shot by ILM, which is what makes it such a prized thing to have back in our possession. The archive is growing slowly, and it's a wonderful resource for Paramount and the Star Trek people that need this material. Herman Zimmerman, the production designer since Star Trek V actually, and also production designer for the first 2 seasons of Star Trek The Next Generation, uses my reference material quite often, and when I'm not working on one of the features, he's typically on the phone. Can you get me a drawing of? Can you get me a copy of? Do you have, as an example for Enterprise, used many things from Star Trek I? Do you have a copy of the galley? Do you have a copy of what might have been Kirk's cabin? Do you have a copy of the Klingon conference room, Khitomer, for example, from one of the other films? And fortunately, I've managed to collect and find most of those materials and do have them in storage. So if he needs the Khitomer conference room, then I have the drawings. And at the end of a very long Star Trek day, it certainly is nice to have my own observation lounge chair from the Enterprise E to relax in.